The sterile air of the lab was filled with a kind of electric excitement. Dr. Emily Carter stood in front of the latest project at Genetica Pharmaceuticals, a breakthrough that could change everything, but also had the potential to go terribly wrong. Her eyes flicked across the rows of monitors, showing the vital signs of their first human test subjects. "We're on the verge of something huge," Emily muttered to herself, but even she wasn't sure if it was going to be a good change or a disaster. The experimental drug, euphorazone, was meant to reduce aggression in humans. Genetica believed they could stop violence on a biochemical level. Emily's thoughts were interrupted by Dr. Alan Hughes, her colleague and longtime friend. "The first phase results are in," he said. 90% reduction in aggressive behavior across the board, he added. Emily felt a wave of relief. "That's incredible, Alan," she said. "Let's move on to the next phase." But there was a worry in Alan's eyes. "We should keep an eye on the side effects. Some of the subjects have been reporting strange dreams and faster heart rates," he said. Emily waved off the concern. "It's probably just their bodies adjusting. Let's move forward." Weeks passed, and the results kept looking better. The drug was hailed as a breakthrough, and soon, news outlets all over the world were picking up the story. Michael Reeves, one of the first volunteers, seemed like a success story. A former soldier who had struggled with PTSD and violent outbursts, Michael's life appeared to be turning around. Euphorazone seemed like a miracle, but sometimes miracles come at a price. One night, Michael woke up in a cold sweat. His mind was a mess of anger and confusion. He stumbled to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, but the rage wouldn't go away. In the mirror, his reflection seemed to twist and move on its own. He screamed and punched the mirror, shattering it. The next morning, Emily received a frantic call from Michael's wife. "He's not the same," she cried. "He's so angry, so violent. Please, you have to help him." Emily rushed to the hospital, where Michael was being held down with restraints. His eyes were wide with rage, and it took several sedatives to calm him. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Emily whispered to Alan as they stood outside his room. "We need to figure out what's going wrong," Alan said. Over the next few days, more cases like Michael started to pop up. Test subjects who had been calm and controlled were suddenly having violent outbursts. The media, which had praised the drug earlier, started sounding alarms. Soon, the streets were filled with panic. Emily and her team worked tirelessly to figure out what was happening, but they couldn't find the answers. The drug that was supposed to stop aggression seemed to be making it worse. One evening, as Emily went through the latest test results, Alan burst into her office. "I think I've figured it out," he said. He spread out a series of graphs. "The drug's messing with certain neurotransmitters," Alan explained. "It's not just blocking aggression, it's building it up, and now it has to come out. That's what's causing these outbursts." Emily stared at the data, her mind racing. "We need to shut this down, Alan. Right now." But by then, it was too late. Euphorazone had already reached the general public. News reports showed people turning violent all over the country. Those who had taken the drug were lashing out at friends, families, and even strangers. The world seemed to be falling apart. "We need to recall euphorazone and apologize," Emily said urgently in an emergency meeting with the board of Genetica Pharmaceuticals. "We can't just sit on this," she said, but not everyone agreed. Some board members worried about the financial and legal fallout. The debate went back and forth, but outside the company, the situation was rapidly getting worse. Communities were falling into chaos, and a primal survival instinct was taking over. Neighborhoods formed militias, people fortified their homes, and trust between individuals had all but disappeared. Emily and Alan set up a mobile lab in an armored van, traveling through the ruined cities to deliver the antidote to key locations. But everywhere they went, people were suspicious. At one stop, a group of armed civilians blocked their path. "We don't trust you," the leader said, pointing a gun at Emily. "How do we know this isn't just another trick?" "I understand your fear," Emily said, trying to stay calm. "But this antidote is our only chance to stop the rage. We need to work together." The man hesitated but eventually lowered his weapon. "Fine, but we'll be watching you." Slowly, the antidote began to work, and the violence started to subside. But the cost had been enormous. Cities were in ruins, families torn apart, and trust in institutions shattered. Emily stood in front of the destroyed Genetica building, now a burned-out shell. The company had been sued into the ground, but that seemed insignificant compared to the human toll. "We've stopped the worst of it," Alan said, joining her, "but it's going to take a long time to rebuild." Emily nodded, her heart heavy. "We have to do more than rebuild. We have to make sure this never happens again." As they worked to restore order, Emily and Alan knew the road ahead would be long. But for the first time in weeks, there was hope. One day, Emily and Alan heard of a heavily fortified community led by a ruthless leader named Marcus. His followers, known as the Enforcers, ruled by force, demanding tribute from surrounding towns. "We have to stop him," Alan said, determination replacing his exhaustion. Emily agreed. "If we can take him down, maybe we can start rebuilding properly." They rallied a group of survivors, including Sarah, a mother who had protected her children from the chaos. Together, they planned to infiltrate Marcus's stronghold and spread the antidote to his followers. The mission was risky, but it was their best chance. On a dark night, Emily, Alan, and their group snuck past the outer defenses and began their operation. When the Enforcers realized they were under attack, chaos broke out. Emily and Alan fought their way through, finally confronting Marcus in his throne room. "Stop this madness," Emily said, but Marcus only laughed. "There is no cure for the rage within us," he sneered. Before Marcus could react, Alan tackled him, and the two men fought. Meanwhile, Emily rushed to give the antidote to the remaining Enforcers, who dropped their weapons as the drug began to take effect. With Marcus subdued, the compound went silent. The survivors, battered but hopeful, gathered in the courtyard. "We did it," Emily said softly to Alan. He nodded, but there was no joy in his eyes. "This is just the beginning. We've got a long way to go." They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. They knew it would take time to rebuild, but for the first time in weeks, there was hope. Afterward, Emily and Alan continued their journey, distributing the antidote and trying to rebuild what had been lost. But they knew that while the antidote could stop the rage, it couldn't fix everything. To fully heal the world, they needed a permanent cure. As they traveled, they met Dr. David Mendez, an old colleague of Emily's who might have the key to the permanent cure. He was hidden away in a remote lab, but after convincing him to help, they began working on a more stable version of the drug. The new formula was effective. It targeted the neurotransmitter imbalance directly and brought people's brain chemistry back to normal. However, before they could mass-produce it, the remnants of the Enforcers attacked, hoping to take control of the cure. Emily, Alan, and their allies fought back, desperate to protect the cure. When Emily faced Lucia, the new leader of the Enforcers, she fought her off and administered the antidote. Lucia's rage slowly faded, replaced by confusion and then regret. With the lab safe, the group set about mass-producing the permanent cure. Over time, communities stabilized, and life began to return to some semblance of normal. Emily knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would always be challenges, but they had learned something valuable in the darkness of those terrible days: the power of resilience, compassion, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. And as the world slowly healed, Emily was ready to keep fighting for a future free from rage. What is your thoughts on video? Like, comment and subscribe the channel.